Meanwhile, it's mayhem in the Maldives. The day after President Abdullah Yameen declared a state of emergency in the country, he remains defiant. Addressing the nation today, Yameen said the emergency decree is to investigate the plot of a coup from the Supreme Court ruling. A shock ruling from the court last week ordering the release of top opposition politicians has triggered a furious response from President Yameen. He said the Supreme Court should not be subject to pressure from other state powers and that the president should have full authority, that is himself, he should have full authority including over the judiciary. He also said that he will address any Supreme Court ruling that erodes democracy. Later in the evening, the Maldives government issued a lengthy statement slamming the Supreme Court order, saying, and I quote, "The Supreme Court attempted to subvert the government and hold hostage the work of the government by obstructing the work of the executive in carrying out its constitutional mandate and legal duties and perverted the course of justice. The president was forced to declare a state of emergency to ensure the smooth running of the state as is mandated to him, and after exhausting all venues available to him legally and protocol-wise to ease out the situation." Hours after declaring a state of emergency for 15 days, President Yameen sent soldiers to storm the court and arrest judges, including Chief Justice Abdullah Saeed. The arrested judges were sent to a detention centre outside Malé. Maldives police also detained Yameen's estranged half-brother and former President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, who had sided with the main opposition. Tension has gripped capital Malé as opposition activists hit the streets protesting against the imposition of the emergency. The United Nations and several countries have urged the Maldives government to respect the court order. All eyes now on Yameen's predecessor, Mohammad Nasheed, who remains in exile in Sri Lanka's capital, Colombo. Mohammad Nasheed has urged India to send its envoy, backed by the military, to secure the release of all political detainees and judges. He's also asked the US to stop all financial transactions of Maldives regime leaders going through American banks. Earlier today, he tweeted to say, and I'm quoting again, "On behalf of the Maldivian people, we humbly request India to send an envoy, backed by its military, to release judges and political detainees, including President Gayoom. We request a physical presence and the US to stop all financial transactions of Maldives regime leaders going through US banks." He's one of the many leaders in the Maldivian opposition urging India to intervene. The government of India has been issuing statements, and this is the latest that it has issued on the situation in the Maldives. I'm quoting from that statement. "We're disturbed by the declaration of a state of emergency in the Maldives following the refusal of the government to abide by the unanimous ruling of the full bench of the Supreme Court and also by the suspension of constitutional rights of the people of the Maldives. The arrest of the Supreme Court Chief Justice and political figures are also reasons for concern." Precious little, you would say. India has been watching closely and expressing concern for a while now. Will it move beyond that? Are Maldivian President Yameen's actions the result of desperation? With elections due in September this year, Yameen needed to ensure the opposition was steamrolled into submission. Here's a look at what could be going on in the island nation.
There is a view in Delhi that the Maldivian President Abdullah Yameen's actions suggest he's batting on a weak wicket. This view holds that Yameen's actions have been driven by the fact that elections are due in September and he stands a good chance of losing. Yameen is not a popular figure in his country, and the manner in which he emerged president in 2013 in a second round of polling where he defeated Mohammad Nasheed narrowly has been widely debated. This view holds that President Yameen has done what he has done to ensure there's no worthwhile opposition against him in September. Do recall that Nasheed remains in exile in Sri Lanka and cannot return until his conviction in 2013 on trumped-up charges of terrorism are overturned. With Yameen in the saddle, there's no chance of the verdict being put aside, which means Nasheed cannot return and contest the elections. Yameen has been quick to get the police on his side, although he had to sack 2 police chiefs before the third agreed to carry out his orders. Will the police stand by him in the event of mass unrest? Not clear, but the army's backing of Yameen bears scrutiny. The Maldivian National Defence Force of about 5,000 personnel has close ties with Pakistan. Officers and men are sent to Pakistan for training. There are joint exercises. In 2014, there was an agreement for making arms and ammunition in the Maldives. There was reference to assembling the Pakistani JF-17 fighter and the Super Mushak trainer in the Maldives. China's entry into the Maldives may have been facilitated by Pakistan, its iron brother. The free trade agreement signed by the two countries last year was not even debated. There's suspicion that China's expanding commercial presence in the Maldives is courtesy President Yamin, who may have benefited in various ways. But China has steered clear of any overt expressions of support for Yamin. It is primarily concerned with protecting its economic investments in the Maldives that are expected to generate strategic spin-offs before long. Bureau Report, WION.
The Maldivians have been making fervent appeals to India and India alone to come to their rescue. In response, New Delhi has been guarded. The appeals are now expanding to address other countries. Here's why India must intervene and make a move now.
At the root of the Maldives' worst crisis is its current president, Abdullah Yamin. And it can be said with certainty that no individual, no matter in how powerful an office, could hold his entire country at ransom unless he has the backing and the support of someone or something very powerful. Media across the world have reported in depth about Mr. Yamin's two closest allies, the Wahhabi Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the People's Republic of China. The Maldivian opposition has united like never before. Former foes have joined hands to save their country from spiraling out of control and joining the ranks of nations that are viewed as rogue states under ruthless dictators such as North Korea. The country's first democratically elected president, Mohammad Nasheed, is in exile. For years, Mr. Nasheed has been appealing to big neighbour India to help. Even the judges of Maldives Supreme Court, who are at the heart of this crisis, have directed their urgent pleas to India, which has often come to the rescue of the Maldives in the past. But India is playing its usual cautious game of wait and watch. That's understandable. India bashing is a favourite pastime across South Asia. The big brother is not keen on now being abused as the big bully too. New Delhi is unlikely to go for unilateral military intervention. Perhaps sensing that, an appeal from the oppositional Maldivians was subtly reworded. A press statement released late in the night after troops stormed Male's Supreme Court, the Maldivian Democratic Party in exile issued a statement. It reads, and I quote, "President Nasheed continues to engage with concerned international partners, including India and other neighbouring countries, seeking resolution to the ongoing crisis and urges India to act swiftly." So who are the other neighbouring countries, that is those who share a South Asian cousinhood with the Maldives? And who are the concerned international partners from outside the South Asia region that the statement refers to? China, the United States and the European Union have all expressed concern at the events. But while the US and the EU have demanded that Mr. Yamin respect his Supreme Court and uphold democracy, China has merely issued a travel advisory to its citizens. India and Sri Lanka have reacted along the same lines as the Western nations. Till the time of airing this report, Pakistan has remained silent. The Maldives is part of China's multi-billion-dollar One Belt, One Road initiative. But the project is under fire in the many nations it touches across the Indian Ocean all the way up to Africa. Uppermost on China's mind will be protection of its investments and assets in the Maldives. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, has a new ruler, Prince Salman. Observers say that Riyadh is no longer as close to President Yamin as earlier. Now, what about Pakistan? The biggest Muslim nation in the SAARC community, the community of South Asian nations, has the second largest global population of Muslims. President Yamin and ousted Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif met in 2017 and signed several bilateral agreements. Pakistan and President Yamin share a mutual friend too, that is China. So why has Pakistan not said a word about the standoff so far? What's brewing? Pakistan's international image is down and out. Being seen as the author of a diplomatic grand gesture, even if a compromise with President Yamin will give the country with the reputation of being a nursery for terrorists a tremendous boost. China cannot intervene directly in the Maldives without incurring even more mistrust than it already has through its controversial debt for development policies in the Indian Ocean. But it can certainly use the South Asian genetics of its close ally Pakistan as the front face of any initiative. New Delhi must act, and act fast. To avoid the label of big bully, India too can proceed in an international collective effort. On the Maldives, the United States and India, for instance, are on the same page. As part of the newly formed Quad, they can now share a major diplomatic success in averting a major crisis in the Indian Ocean region. Padma Rao, WION.
The United States has condemned it, and so has Australia. The United Nations has expressed concern, and so have Canada and even India. The world is watching the Maldives and want President Yameen to respect the Supreme Court verdict, release 9 members of parliament arrested on reportedly trumped-up charges, and practically pave the way for the return of the single largest opposition Maldivian Democratic Party, whose leaders remain in exile. After the Supreme Court verdict, President Yameen made his moves. At first, rapidly. 2 legislators who had been out of the country as events unfolded were arrested at the airport as soon as they arrived. But some hours later, they were released. Then there was a dramatic escalation. Websites were pulled down. Journalists threatened. The judges of the Supreme Court, including its Chief Justice, reportedly received death threats. The judges spent the night inside the Supreme Court, and as predicted, troops loyal to President Yameen marched into the building at night. Once again, 2 of them were arrested. Later, in the same night, the situation grew even more dramatic. Police and troops surrounded the residence of former President Maumoon Gayoom. In the presence of his daughter and other family members, the frail 80-year-old, who is said to be undergoing periodic treatment in the Indian city of Bangalore, was taken into custody on vague charges of bribery. Mr. Gayoom is the current President Yameen's half-brother, but associates of Mr. Yameen have disclosed that there is no love lost between the 2 men. The story gets even stranger. Just hours after the midnight drama, there was a release, that of Faris Maumoon. There are 2 aspects to this release, and they have set a cat among the pigeons in the Maldives. Faris Maumoon is one of the 9 legislators the Supreme Court's verdict has ordered the release of. He was in jail on charges of reported corruption. But Faris Maumoon just happens to be former President Maumoon Gayoom's eldest son. So was there a trade-off? Something along the lines of, take me into custody but release my son. President Gayoom's fellow legislators in the joint opposition dismissed the idea. There is such unity, that joint oppositional front, to topple Mr. Yameen, that they do not believe President Gayoom would have acted selfishly to have only his son released. But then why are there some releases and some arrests? Everything that President Yameen has done in reaction to the verdict up to now has been far from constitutional. So why did he not just go the whole hog and arrest everyone opposed to him? Why only some? A presidential spokesman could not explain that finer point to WION either. Listen in.
There are ongoing investigations into corruption, into bribery, and to comment on details, I think the investigative authorities will be able to comment on details. But as far as the arrests and release go, the investigations are ongoing. So inquiries will be made, and arrests will be made. Investigations will continue.
The million-dollar question, what is President Yameen up to? Is he trying to fracture the united opposition through the move to arrest a father but release the son? Is support for President Yameen, wherever that may be coming from, dwindling even as pressure from the international community piles up? For now, the Maldives president may not give 2 hoots about what the world thinks of him, but he will most certainly want both the police and the armed forces on his side, and that, given the reported fissures within those organizations, may not be a privilege he enjoys for much longer. Now let's talk about another country in the neighborhood, an immediate neighbor of India. The clamor for action against Pakistan is growing in Washington, D.C. As rights groups carried out a protest against atrocities in Karachi, 2 lawmakers in the House of Representatives moved a new bill to cut all non-defense aid to Pakistan.
The Trump administration has not held back in its criticism against Pakistan. From tweets to soundbites, Washington has made itself clear. They want Pakistan to double up their efforts against terror groups operating on their soil. But American lawmakers are getting impatient. 2 Republican lawmakers, Thomas Massie and Mark Sanford, have moved a bill in the House of Representatives. They want the Trump administration to cut all non-defense aid to Pakistan. Their demand is simple. They want the US government to divert the aid money to infrastructure projects in America. In a blunt statement, Mark Sanford sent a direct message to Pakistan. that American aid money is not to reward terrorists. As the aid cut bill made its way inside the US Capitol, activists from the Free Karachi campaign gathered outside to raise their voice against atrocities by Pakistani authorities. Nearly 100 yellow taxis with Free Karachi banners were seen around Washington during the day. The campaign is an attempt to highlight atrocities against the Muhajir community, who had left India in 1947 to migrate to Pakistan.
It's been 70 years of Pakistan's inception, but Muhajirs have never been accepted in Pakistan as true citizens. There has never been a Muhajir chief minister in Sindh province. There is a quota system that gives only peanuts of Karachi citizens representation in jobs and professional educational institution. We are forced to live a life of third-grade citizens in Pakistan, despite the fact it was our forefathers who were at the forefront of Pakistan movement in the 1930s and 40s.
The lawmakers and the activists are now knocking on President Trump's door. So what options does he have? The US president could downsize the existing aid package to Pakistan. This is something that has been tried before by the Trump administration. The US government could also impose targeted sanctions and move to cut off cash supply to terrorists in Pakistan. They could also withdraw support to Pakistan for loans from international bodies. And finally, the US president could even consider military action on terrorists from Afghanistan. The firm approach adopted by President Trump against Pakistan is a significant US foreign policy shift. But America will have the Chinese to contend with. Beijing has always been an all-weather ally to Islamabad. Experts feel that by increasing its investments in Pakistan through the Belt and Road Initiative, China will be in a position to wield more power in the South Asian region. Bureau Report, WION.
Now for our special report from Congo. The areas that Indian forces are guarding in Congo are some of the remotest on the planet. WION's Kartikeya Sharma sent us this report as he visited a forward station of the UN peacekeeping mission in that country.
So now we are flying over the Lake Edward and we are going to those areas where the camps are, and the camps are going to be shown like this. I will ask my camera person to keep to his left, and now we are going to show you the illegal camps which are being, which are on the banks of the Lake Edward. This is one of the Great Lake of Edward, and the camps are on the left-hand side. So these are the camp areas, and now we are doing a flying over these areas to give you an idea as to how the camps have been organized. Most of these areas are uninhabited. Most of these areas are so far away from Congo, and it is for this reason this recce has been organized. So with camera person Manish Srivastava, Kartikeya Sharma from Congo for WION.
The United Nations mission in Congo is a tricky one. On the banks of Lake Edwards, WION's Kartikeya Sharma witnessed the scale of the problem. A sprawling militant settlement has come up, and removing them is a big challenge.
Now we are taking you to one of the big lakes of Africa, Lake Edward, and we will show you the camps of militants, camps of militias who have made their houses here. And that is why you see that attack helicopters are giving us protection. It is not like that attack helicopters have come. Attack helicopters have come to give us protection, and we are flying in series. We are flying in series of 3. So one attack helicopter is in front of us, one attack helicopter is at the back of us. And that's the way we are flying. And we will be able to show you that we are being protected by 2 attack helicopters of the UN pilots, and they have made the formation, and the attack helicopters have made the formation, and they are flying at a distance, and it is to ensure that no one fires at us, and it is for this reason this formation has taken place. Now this is an area where it joins Tanzania. This is an area, barren area, which is touching the borders of the Great Lake. And this is the area where maximum infiltration takes place. And we are showing you that area which is part of the great Rift Valley of Africa. And because it is so far away, it is so unmapped, uncovered, that the people have come here and made home, whereas they do not belong to Congo. And now you can see, we are doing low flying. This is called low flying. We are flying barely 30 meters above the ground. So this is called low flying. It is a very serious thing to do. Commercial pilots cannot do this. Only expert pilots can do this. This is called low flying. So this is low flying, and what we are showing you is low flying. So you can see it is only 30 meters above the ground. Only 30 meters above the ground, and that is to evade any sort of long ambush. You keep it to the earth, you keep close to the earth, and you know that you will be able to evade. So this is the way the formation has taken place, and now we are closing into the Lake Edward, and around that Lake Edward we will go where the militants have made their temporary shelters. With camera person Manish Srivastava, Kartikeya Sharma from Ravindi, WION. Now you can see we are being escorted by armed helicopters, and the fact that we were near the militants, the terrorist camp, we were actually covering the camps of militias. These two armed helicopters had given us security through Lake Edward and adjoining areas. These are the armed helicopters with missiles and machine guns, and two of them are flying, not one of them. And this armed helicopter which is flying is to give us security, because this is a militant terrorist infested area. And they have missiles also, but the important part is that these helicopters are run by South African pilots. They are from South Africa, and we were given armed escort. We were given armed escort for one simple reason, that the area is not stable. So you can see that these helicopters, Apaches, and these are Apaches which you saw were protecting the crew, which is the WION's crew here. For a simple reason, because WION has got you to this territory, this place, which is completely, I would say, out of bounds for the civilian population. So with camera person Manish Srivastava, Kartikeya Sharma from Congo for WION. So I am on my way to Ravindi. Ravindi is in Congo, and you can see the helicopter is taking a turn towards its left, and I am joined by Major Pranay Gala, who is part of the United Nations Peacekeeping Force. Pranay, how challenging, adventurous and difficult is the task of peacekeeper in Congo?
It is a very challenging and difficult task per se, but the training that we get in our own army back in our country land, the experiences that we have, makes it very easy for the Indian peacekeepers to operate and work in Congo under the United Nations. Of course, it has its own challenges of cultural differences, language barriers, the change in dynamics, the situation, and the political turmoil, the frequency with which situation changes over here. But we are one of the best forces under the United Nations with a remarkable job that we are doing, and which is also widely recognized by the locals over here as well.
Pranay, one thing I would like to ask you, how do you balance between the locals and the Congolese army? Because when it comes to Congolese army, they are not very professional, and locals have their own expectations from UN. So how do you balance those counter aspirations, training the army and maintaining the interest of the local community?
Well, it is a very challenging task per se, because as per the UN mandate, we are supposed to be helping the local army, the Congolese army, with their training. We are also supposed to help them with a bit of operations per se. But if we help them openly, then we also might be creating dissent among the local people. There might be armed groups which think that we are against them, helping the local army. But then we have to strike a very fine balance, wherein we have to respect the sentiments of the people, take care of the sentiments, and at the same time help the Congolese army raise their standards so that they can take care of their own country themselves.
But you know, the bottom line here is, look at the remoteness of this area. You know, Pranay, when you operate here, when you come here, how does your experience of the world, how does your experience of Indian military comes handy in Congo?
In fact, this question has been asked by a lot of other nationals who are here under the UN flag with us. And I always tell them that the experience that we have in our country land, be it Kashmir, be it the north or the northeast, comes in very handy because we've handled situations like this. We handle locals like this. The welfare measures that we do, the kind of operations that we're doing, the kind of recognition that we're doing even now are similar to what we've done back in our country land. So we are amongst the most experienced people to be here in Congo under the United Nations.
So, you know, life is full of challenges, and Major Pranay Kala is one of the faces of Indian military. He, like many others, symbolizes the exemplary vigor, professionalism and patriotism of Indian men on men in olive with blue caps. The camera person Manish Srivastava, Karthikeya Sharma from Congo for WION.
Years of conflict, famine and political upheaval have taken their toll on South Sudan's education system. Many schools have been destroyed by armed groups or stand empty because children and teachers are too scared to attend. Take a look at this report.
3 years ago, chalk was replaced by Kalashnikovs in this abandoned school. A heavy military presence in Mundri, a remote area of western South Sudan, forced teachers and students to flee. Hundreds of South Sudanese children are deprived of an education as a result of the devastating 4-year civil war.
I've got no items and no everything in school. So our children are sitting at home because there is no teaching for them.
A ceasefire agreement signed at the end of 2017 has banned the occupation of schools and requires both government troops and opposition forces to withdraw from those that they have occupied. Now local authorities say that some schools will soon be reopened.
By February they go back to school. This is a very good school behind me here. There's 8 classrooms and desks. The children have not been going to the school for the last 3 years, which is very, very bad.
Constant military operations have seen control of the area change hands between government and opposition forces on several occasions. The United Nations mission in South Sudan regularly conducts patrols to meet with various armed groups, while asking for peace agreements to be upheld. Opposition forces say they are also ready to allow children to resume class.
Let us give chance for the peace to prevail this time. And it should be durable peace, not just today and tomorrow another war. No, it's not. We don't want to break, but we want a sustainable peace to come back to South Sudan.
The matter is becoming more pressing each day, as 3/4 of children in South Sudan are missing out on an education, the highest rate of any country.
So from rockets going up to stocks which are nosediving, world stock markets plunged for a 4th consecutive day today. $4 trillion of investor wealth has been wiped off in just the last 8 days. Europe's main bourses were down around 2.5% in today's trade. Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by a further 2% just a while ago, which meant that it was 10% down from its recent peak. But it bounced back a little as the session progressed. The S&P 500 followed a similar pattern, losing 2% in the very beginning to rebound by about 0.5% overall. Investors were left with little option but to seek traditional refuge with the gold and the dollar. Benchmark government bonds, ironically one of the initial triggers for the sell-off, also gained in today's trade. Commodities remained gloomy as well, with oil and industrial metals all tumbling backwards as the year's stellar start for risk assets rapidly soured. Playtime is officially over, kids, is how one analyst described the situation. The equity market sell-off had been viewed by some as a healthy correction after a rapid run-up over the last year. In India, the BSE Sensex ended 1.6% down at 34,195. The Nifty 50 closed 1.58% lower at 10,498. So what explains this bloodbath on Dalal Street in particular and global markets in general? Investors are wary of the upcoming RBI policy review. Many feel the Reserve Bank of India could consider revising the inflation numbers after the government announced a hike in the minimum support price for Kharif crops. The changes in fiscal deficit target could also influence the decision of the Reserve Bank. The carnage on Wall Street also had a ripple effect on the Indian markets, and experts say the sell-off in the American markets was sparked by a sharp rise in American bond yields. which was triggered by the release of last week's jobs data, which showed that employers have added more jobs and wage growth is at its strongest in more than 8 years. And this sparked concerns that inflation and interest rates could go up. The rupee has also dropped to a one-month low against the dollar in recent days. Experts believe a weak rupee is also to blame for the stock market tumble. The market is still recovering from the government's decision to tax long-term gains. Investors fear that this decision alone could lead to a drop in foreign investments. And so far, foreign buyers have bought more than $2 billion worth of domestic shares. And finally, some expensive shares also saw a drop in their value today. Many feel that this was a correction in their high valuations, and this contributed to the bloodbath. Joining us is WION's correspondent Nick Harper. He's with us from New York. It's morning there, Nick, and the markets have opened down once again, only to recover a bit. What do analysts see the trend being like in the rest of the day?
Well, it's a really wild ride. We've seen about an hour and 45 minutes of trading so far. The market's starting the day about 2% lower and then recovering within the next 15 minutes, moving up into positive territory, back into negative, back into positive, and now, once again, they've turned negative. Currently around 0.2 to 0.4% lower for the three different indexes. If you look at that as a points range, we've seen nearly a 1,000 point range. So from the lowest point they've been during trading up until the highest point. That is a wildly differing point range, considering we've only been trading for about an hour and 45 minutes. There's still a long way to go before the markets close. Yes, some analysts thinking that maybe this is potentially just a small blip, or others are thinking that it could be a much needed correction, considering we've seen the stock markets increase massively during the course of the last year or so. Since Donald Trump, the US president, got elected back in November 2016, we've seen the markets go from record high. For example, the Dow Jones, it's added about 8,000 points in total. Over the course of the last two sessions, on Friday and Monday, it shaved off about 1,800 points. So there's still about a 6,000 point cushion from that Trump bump since his election. If it were to knock off another 6,000 points, we'd be back to the starting point before Donald Trump was elected. So the markets overall are still doing well, but there is this wild ride, a lot of volatility with trading once again on Wall Street this Tuesday.
And that is the trend across the world, a lot of volatility. And we've spoken to very many experts who say that a lot of factors have contributed, but there is no one specific trigger for this slide. What is the advice then for the small investor?
Well, I think that's it. Yes, there is no real one thing. It was the jobs data on Friday that perhaps unnerved investors initially, that concern that the US Federal Reserve may be more aggressive with its interest rate rises this year. It's already promised 3 rate rises, but potentially there could be more. For those small investors, maybe this may be the time to be able to get in on some deals, as we're seeing some of the stock prices dropping. We are already beginning to see some bargain hunters who are jumping on some of the big tech companies. Usually their stock at least recently has been very high and growing. Some people now trying to get in and get some bargain basement deals. The likes of Apple and Google's parent company Alphabet have seen some buying as a result of that. So there is an opportunity for those investors, but considering the volatility, the turbulence, the fact that the points are shifting so quickly, they will have to move fast, and there is always the possibility that markets will continue this plunge, not just during today's trading, but potentially over the days ahead as well. So it is a risky time for the markets.
Right, Nick Harper, thanks very much for bringing us the perspective there from New York. Volatility expected to continue in markets across the globe is what analysts see in the days ahead.